Most of Week 15 is in the books, and it started with an NFC West clash between the 49ers and Seahawks on Thursday night. The 49ers went into Seattle and won with the score of 21-13 and gave up a combined 20 points in 5 days. My biggest takeaway is the 49ers defense is the best in the NFL, and while Brock Purdy has played good, and credit to him for doing so, as long as the 49ers do not have abysmal quarterback play, meaning as long as Purdy does not lose them games, they can and probably will go a long way. Their defense is one of the best we've seen in years, and I do think they will go to at least the NFC Championship game. That is, of course, barring Purdy not throwing them games away. With Seattle, they were at an extreme disadvantage entering this game because of the large time of possession deficit they had against Carolina in Week 14, as they were on the field for 39 minutes defensively in that game. I expected them to lose and to be worn out in this game, and San Francisco ran the ball 34 times for 170 yards. I think Gino will be their quarterback next year, and if they get into the playoffs, I do think Seattle will be a first-round exit. However, I love their future, especially with the 2022 draft class. There were 3 games on Saturday, and it started with the Colts and Vikings. As a Vikings fan, I was pretty upset with how the first half went, as they were down 33-0 at half, and they looked about as bad as a team can look in any game. But the second half was a completely different story, and they successfully completed the largest comeback in NFL history. Are they going to win the Super Bowl now because of this comeback? I would say probably not, but they are NFC North champions and will host a playoff game at US Bank Stadium. For Minnesota, whether you are a believer or non-believer, I think Week 15 can have you lean either way, and I don't think there is a right answer one way or another. If you think they're frauds, getting down 33-0 to a Jeff Saturday coach team gives you reason to believe they are in fact frauds. And if you're a believer, well, this was your day and they are now 10-0 in one-score games. For Indy, guys, I'm sorry you have to go through this season. It's been an absolute nightmare. My only takeaway is they need to do a complete sweep of the front office and start over. This is about as bad of a situation as you're going to find across the NFL, and getting outscored 39-3 in the second half and overtime shows it. And from the Twin Cities, we go to Cleveland to discuss the Ravens and Browns. My biggest takeaway from this game is not that the Ravens need Lamar Jackson back, and they do to be clear, but Greg Roman called an awful game. Justin Tucker uncharacteristically missed 2 field goals, and so did Browns kicker Cade York, but this isn't me misreading a stat here. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards each averaged over 7.8 yards per carry, and yes, Gus only had 7 carries, but when you have a backup quarterback in Tyler Huntley averaging 4.6 yards per passing attempt in inclement weather, why would you not continue to run the football? I don't get it, and Mark Andrews has 1 game in his last 6 with 60 or more receiving yards. They will more than likely make the playoffs, but I have serious concerns with Baltimore. I don't think Cleveland is in a great situation either, and in 3 games since Deshaun came back, they have not looked great offensively, and their season is very much over. They also have kicker problems, as Cade York has missed a ton of kicks on the year, and their run defense is a huge problem moving forward. Up I-90 to Buffalo to discuss the Dolphins and Bills, and the Bills have had their fair share of ups and downs all season, like everyone has. But this was a great team win, as Josh Allen threw for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, and they ran the ball well, and a huge shout-out goes to Devin Singletary for his situational awareness late in the fourth quarter. We've heard all year they need someone else aside from Stephon Diggs to step up in the receiving game, and Dawson Knox did in a big way. He led the Bills with 98 receiving yards, and the home field advantage was evident in the fourth quarter. If Buffalo gets the number 1 seed, I can't imagine any team wanting to go up there and play them in the cold and possible snow as well. Highmark Stadium presents one hell of a home field advantage. For Miami, this very much felt like a playoff game, and the good news here is, unlike after a playoff loss, well, they still have time to right the ship. I like Mike McDaniel a lot as a head coach, and I think he's going to be a good coach for the long term, And having said that, it's also okay to be critical of some decisions he made. Mike, it's okay to run the football on 3rd and short. Going on the road in the AFC is going to be tough, and the Dolphins weren't necessarily supposed to be Super Bowl contenders this year as it was, but little things like this can go a long way. The Dolphins are a damn good team and can compete with anybody. They just need to have better situational play calling, and this can easily be fixed. On to Sunday's games, and looking at the matchups, you wouldn't think they were a great batch of games. However, all came down to the wire and all were close to the end. And we are starting in the Big Easy to discuss the Falcons and Saints. The biggest takeaway I had from this game is when everyone is clamoring for a rookie quarterback. Hell, myself, I've done this a lot. Due to your team possibly being done, or in this case, Marcus Mariota clearly not being the answer, there's always a possibility the young guy could be worse. Desmond Ridder will have a couple of games after this to get better, but this was an ugly first start. He averaged an insanely low 3.7 yards per attempt, and it's a miracle the Falcons' running game is as good as it is. The Saints are 5-9, and some of those close losses are brutal at the moment. I do want to credit the Saints for sweeping the Falcons, as the New Orleans-Atlanta rivalry is an underrated one across the NFL, and the Saints fan base will gladly take this sweep. It is still very much fire Dennis Allen as he mishandles a ton of in-game situations, but a good win and sweep for New Orleans. Staying in the NFC South to discuss Steelers-Panthers, and this game featured a former number 2 overall draft pick and a number 3 overall draft pick in Mitch Trubisky and Sam Darnold. The Steelers' game plan was very simple: stop the run and force Sam Darnold to beat them, and they successfully did this, as the Panthers, as a team, ran the ball 16 times for 21 yards for an average of 1.3 yards per carry. There were also a lot of positives offensively, and to name a few, they were Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Najee Harris. Games like this are why the Deontay Johnson fans are as adamant as their guy as they are. And for Pittsburgh, this is something you usually do not hear, but the offensive line won them this game. They are in the hunt for now. For Carolina, this was an extremely frustrating game, and I think the play that best describes this loss, or at least the frustration, is the 3rd and 8 quarterback draw. I will never understand that. They had won 3 of the last 4, and sure, Sam Darnold may not be a great quarterback, or even good, but get DJ Moore the football. The Steelers completely dominated the time of possession in this game and were 12 of 16 on 3rd downs, and they had a hard-fought win. Chiefs-Texans is up, and Chiefs fans, please do not hold back in the comments with how you feel about Carl Cheffers. Kansas City had over 500 yards of offense in this game, and Patrick Mahomes went 36 of 41 for 336 yards and 2 touchdowns. They also ran for 189 yards and an additional 2 touchdowns, and this game went to overtime. Credit to the Texans for staying in this game and for being a true thorn in team sides like the Cowboys just last week and Kansas City in Week 15. There's not much to take away from this game as the better team won, but I do want to credit Houston for sticking around. I don't think it's time to panic for Kansas City, and I want that much to be clear. They're 11-3, and if they lose one of the 3 remaining games against Seattle, Denver, or Las Vegas, then maybe, and again, that's still a maybe, we can have that conversation. For Houston, it's been a bad couple of years with how everything has unfolded, from the DeAndre Hopkins fleece to Deshaun Watson and everything in between, but competing with the Cowboys and Chiefs with a bad roster is nothing short of encouraging, especially when there will be 2 first-round picks added to this roster next year, along with free agency. From the Space City to the Windy City to discuss the Eagles and Bears. My biggest takeaway for Chicago is a very obvious one. Bears fans, please chime in with this. But first things first, it was a miracle this game was as close as it was, given the mismatch the Eagles had in the trenches. The Bears' offensive line got killed up front on Sunday. The takeaway is draft either Peter Skoronski in the upcoming draft, a top prospect from Northwestern, or another top offensive lineman with their soon-to-be top 5 pick. They have to protect Justin Fields. There's always a crowd with the quarterbacks running and, oh, he's going to get hurt, and we hear that a lot with Lamar, but it doesn't matter if it's Justin Fields or Peyton Manning when there is no time to throw because of how dominant the Eagles' defensive line was. For Philadelphia, I think the biggest takeaway is this was the definition of a trap game, given they were playing an electric young quarterback in very cold weather on the road, and that an ugly win is better than an ugly loss. And something else benefited them in a big way, and it was a game that was played in North Florida, which perfectly segues us into Cowboys-Jags. And within this, I don't know where to start with Dallas, as there is a lot to unfold. Kellen Moore is not as good of a play caller as we all thought once upon a time, as the 3rd and 4 near the end of the game was awful. Dallas was up 27-10 with 4 minutes left in the third and were outscored 30-7 the rest of the way. This team's last 3 games were this loss, the Texans' nail-biting win over a team that's won 12-1, and an all-time fourth quarter collapse by the Colts, who were just outscored 39-3 in the second half and overtime by the Vikings. This team that beat the Vikings and Giants in weeks 11 and 12 is nowhere to be found. And oh yeah, they play the Eagles this Saturday, and because of this inexcusable loss, this game now has a lot less meaning. For Jacksonville, you guys could have a whole video with the evolution of Trevor Lawrence this year, and he is a legitimate franchise quarterback. It's always cliche to say things are looking up for a franchise with a young quarterback, but everyone has bought in, and if you want to play to show that, look no further than the determination by Evan Ingram to get out of bounds to save the timeout late in the fourth quarter. The Jags are not the same old Jags. Buy the hype. Several hundred miles up Interstate 95, we go to discuss Jets-Lions, and this is an insanely both annoying and frustrating loss for the Jets. They are now 2-5 since Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker suffered season-ending injuries, and sure, Zach Wilson predictably did not play perfect in this game, but the clock management from Robert Saleh was awful. And I've been a huge supporter of everything they've done over the past few years, but Robert Saleh needs to get better as an in-game head coach. Unfortunately, that is my biggest takeaway from this game. Since the Jets started out 1-2, you could make a case they could have won every other game as they have been in all of those. Maybe Buffalo last week, but the rest of the ones, they could have won. If a play here or a play there bounces their way, and unfortunately, they haven't. For Detroit, congratulations on getting back to 500, as it has been a long ride back to this point. I do think they will make the playoffs, as their final 3 games are at Carolina, home against Chicago, and at Green Bay. I am incredibly happy for my guy Dan Campbell, as I didn't think we would get to this point in 2022, but here we are. And the Lions, as Chris Berman would say, are in the playoff hunt. The Arizona Cardinals are done with the 2022 season. They have no hope, they do not play with energy, and it's evident. Clean house, Cliff, see ya. It's time. Jerry Jeudy has 3 straight games with 60 or more yards and looks like a good young receiver. He will be around for a little while, and the Broncos defense feasted on Trace McSorley, and for as bad as their year has been, the defense has been phenomenal. The best part for Denver, this win does not affect their top 5 draft pick. For clarity, the Broncos draft pick is in Seattle's possession. Now, the Tennessee Titans, on the other hand, are a disaster. They've lost 4 games in a row, and I'm not sure if they can beat the Texans next week. Their final 2 games are Dallas and then Jacksonville. I truly believe the Jags are going to win the AFC South, and I don't understand with how bad Dennis Daly, the left tackle playing in place of Taylor Lewan, who tore his ACL back in week 2, why they don't bring in anybody to try and play in his place. It's awful. The Chargers, on the other hand, had a perfect week 15 as they had an immense amount of help as the Dolphins, Patriots, and Jets all lost. They've won 3 of 4, and my biggest gripe, and I think Chargers fans would agree, Joe Lombardi, let Justin Herbert cook. He's insanely talented, and let him cook, Joe. Bengals Bucs time, and my biggest takeaway is to never count out the Cincinnati Bengals. Lou Anarumo is a hell of a defensive coordinator, and the defense does not get enough credit. They are collectively one of the best units in the league. Enough credit cannot be given to them for putting the Bengals in great scoring position not once, but multiple times in the second half. Tampa, on the other hand, is done. Todd Bowles is not a good in-game coach, and Byron Leftwich, the offensive coordinator, has been bad all year. For what it's worth, give the Jags credit where it's due for not hiring Leftwich despite the public wanting it to happen. I think the Bucs' future is ugly, and I think it's going to start with Tom Brady retiring or leaving to go elsewhere in free agency this offseason. And from Tampa to Las Vegas, we go to discuss Patriots-Raiders. For the Raiders, Raider Nation, I'm going to be honest here, I feel like this is a game you guys would lose in this fashion, especially when factoring in everything that preceded the final play. I am very happy for the fan base, and as Al Davis would say, just win, baby. For New England, aside from the final play and what will be memed for years, this whole year has been a disaster. I will do a video soon on the Patriots and break everything down, but their future is legitimately concerning. Yes, losing like this sucks, but in some ways, this is the least of their concerns moving forward. They truly are in a bad situation, and on that sour note, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world. I cannot thank you guys enough for the support, and until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.